All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the sixth episode of AppSource Central. Here we discuss Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central apps in AppSource, and we talk to ISVs, the people basically behind those apps. Today, I have a guest from across the ditch, as we would call here in New Zealand, for someone in Australia. And I'll be speaking to one busy ISV. They're one of the ISVs that have more than 100 apps in AppSource. So we'll talk about how do they manage all those, and we try to dive in as much as we can. I had the pleasure today having Brett Foot from Fenwick with me. Brett, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No worries, no worries. Okay, so let's start with introducing yourself, Brett. Can you please introduce yourself briefly, and then we'll take it from there.
Yep. So hi, I'm Brad Foote from Fenwick over here in Melbourne, and yeah, I'm the COO at Fenwick, and I'm also the product manager of Fenwick Apps, which is what we'll be talking about today. So I manage the team that develops the apps, and yeah, so I sort of wear two hats, but yeah, we'll focus on the apps hat today.
Yeah, sure. We will talk about the apps, Fenwick apps, the new branding, and we'll talk about where does Fenwick Gold sits in, and oh, you have quite a busy program. But before that, what is Fenwick? So can you talk about the history of Fenwick and a bit of information about your BC practice?
Yeah, so Fenwick Software started in 1976, so we'll celebrate 50 years next year. So, yeah, started in Melbourne, and yeah, obviously through those 70s, 80s, and sort of into the 90s, a lot of custom development, building custom systems, obviously in the early days of IT in Australia. And then, yeah, as sort of packaged software became more ubiquitous through the 90s, took on a couple of packages through the 90s, and then discovered Navision in about 98, around 98, 99, a little bit before my time, where we had an opportunity with one of our clients where their head office from Europe was rolling out Navision worldwide, and their Navision had just come to Australia, and they sort of said, hey, will you guys learn Navision and implement it for us? And we're like, the team back then evaluated and said, geez, this is a good product, and the rest is history. And yeah, become the main product of the business. So sort of through the noughties when I started, yeah, the sort of the packages we had through the 90s sort of started ramping down, and Navision started ramping up, and now obviously Business Central. So for 25 years now, we've sort of become the sort of the largest team in Australia implementing Business Central, and expanded offices into Sydney and Brisbane over the last sort of 5 years, and we've got a team of about sort of 50 consultants, developers that implement Business Central, and then sort of another sort of admin and marketing on top of that. Plus, there's about 7 of us now in the apps team that develop the app side of the business. So yeah.
Right. With your presence in AppSource, which is getting bigger and bigger, is there a
Yeah.
shift towards projects versus products? So do you put more emphasis on product development now, or is it just the same people and just take it as they come?
Yeah, well, the history was that, yeah, through the development, and sort of the early, sort of, I guess, the first decade, as we were getting into implementations and more complex implementations, we were finding, sort of, I guess, we were coming up with great ideas, or there was gaps in the product or demand that our clients wanted, and we wanted to move away from every time building customization and sort of embedding and creating legacy problems in the future. And so it was sort of around 2010, we started talking about, hey, we've kind of keep doing all these similar things, whether it be with our manufacturing clients, building, the same sort of production scheduler type, taking what they were doing in a spreadsheet, bringing it
Yeah.
into Nav, and we thought, hey, there's a better way of doing this. So we thought, hey, let's take all these ideas and different ways we've been doing things and try and bring it together and create a product out of, create products out of it, rather than the conversation in pre-sales being, hey, we need to do a customization. We've done something similar before. We can build that for you. It'll cost X. Say, we've got a product. It's in use by all of our clients. Tried and tested. Here's the licensing fee. It already exists, and so that conversation, much better conversation. So yeah, we sat down and went through all the ideas we had, and we came up with a list of 30 different, what we called back then, I think we called them granules or
Yeah,
modules, before the word app even existed. On paper, we had, 30 products, 30 modules, and so then we're going into pre-sales, and it was a little bit of vaporware back then, which shows ideas and
yeah,
start. We're building it up. We'd make sales. We'd go into pre-sales and show some ideas and things, and people got on board. And then back then we were just consultants. We didn't have dedicated developers at all. So me as
yeah,
a consultant, I was doing development. We had sort of those sort of mixed skill consultants, and so as we were doing implementations, instead of building customization, we're building up product and adding to product and standardizing it. And so really for the first, 8 years of that sort of product, which we termed Fenwick Gold at the time, we were just building up products as part of our implementations and then implementing it for our client base. And so the products only were available to our clients that were implementing it for our clients. And then, yeah, when Business Central sort of came along around 2018, we decided that, hey, we should, obviously jump on board with the App Store and take all this embedded sort of monolith we had that was Fenwick Gold and turn it into individual apps. And so then that sort of those 30 apps, became modules became
yeah.
apps, and we started converting them and extracting them from our gold based app and creating apps and putting them on AppSource so that our customers and now the world could start downloading them and using them. And so
Yeah, but
yeah,
sounds like you guys were already ready to the app source era. Because the ethos is doing the repeatable solution, make it as an app and put it out there. And the Fenwick Gold, and I watched a video 13 years ago in your YouTube channel, I think 11 or
yeah,
13 years ago. You were
yeah,
basically talking about app source and the repeatable apps, repeatable solutions. But back then, as you said, it was called Granules and it was living under the Fenwick Gold umbrella. But
yep,
even today, when you go to your website and look at the solutions, there's a
yep,
solution section in your website. It
yep.
still has that specific Fenwick Gold code, I think, FW of FG
FG,
02, yeah,
yeah,
FG,
yeah,
FG
yeah, yeah,
25, FG blah
yeah,
blah. So they made it through all these years and now
yep,
modernized, and they're living in AppSource,
yep,
and which
yep,
is great.
yep,
Yeah, that's a really good summary. Thank you very much. Can you talk about your? So obviously you have a heavy presence in Australia, and I assume there's some New Zealand as well.
yep.
Do you bit with your presence in AppSource now? Does your customer base has been expanded to other areas of the world? Can you talk us through your customer base in geographically?
Yeah, so really for the first, sort of probably 2018 until really sometime last year, we would just, we'd convert the old granule, the tried and
Yeah,
tested, go through the transformation process to make them extensions and get them, get good documentation, get them as an app file, get them through the app source validation, and here they are. They're now an app,
yeah,
that
yeah,
anyone can search and find on the world. And we really, didn't put any marketing effort into that. They were just there,
yeah,
and then just would organically, people would, come up with the need and search app source or do a
yeah,
Google search and either find our website or app source and yeah, start downloading it. And we built a monetization app that we called Fenwick Gold Account that integrates with Stripe, so people would download, put their details in, put their credit card in, and that was the sort of the transaction.
yeah,
Some would contact and ask for help, and we sort of were in this era of we had a lot of IP to convert, and it took 5 years to take all that logic out of the Cal base. And the base app and
yeah.
and and break it all apart, and really 30 granules, have now become about 70, main apps because we've created in that 5 years more apps as well. Um, and so, yeah, really through, as I said, no, we've attended Directions North America the last few years and sort of got noticing
Uh-huh.
that in North America was, one of our predominant areas that were downloading our apps.
Mm,
We thought that's a good market to get into, sort of historical, sort of heavier with GP, a lot of GP
yeah,
moving across to BC, not as a mature market as Europe, which is quite big and saturated with product. We thought that good market to get into and have a
sure.
little bit more of a focus on. And so I've attended Directions just to get our name out there. So that's sort of a level of marketing. And yeah, and we've sort of built up. I was adding up the other day, around 30 partners have signed into our partner program
Oh,
that are,
nice.
VARs, across the world, that have got, had a client with a requirement, downloaded their first app and joined that. And then, on top of that, I think, we probably have another sort of 30 end user type sites that, have just contacted us directly to get our apps. So it's sort of organically built just by being there. And
Yeah.
now, we hired a marketing team last year who are doing a wonderful job, who, sort of went through that rebrand of Gold to apps and, really
Yes.
creating that international app market, and, and having that sort of focus to push internationally and, really give other partners around in the world the benefit that we had by having these products all these years, that it's made us a better consultancy, better quality implementer. We're not there to consult to the rest of the world, but we're there to provide the product to the consultancies around the world to make their job easier and have success like we have had.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And as you said, just putting an app out there to the AppSource marketplace, that alone can be a marketing, right? Someone can find you from there,
Yep.
anywhere from the world, and then get in touch, and then you can
Yep.
take care of the rest. So
Yep.
you mentioned the Fenwick Gold, Fenwick Apps. Now we hear Fenwick Apps. So can we think it as Fenwick Apps is the end of Fenwick Gold era? So it's like a rebranding of Fenwick Gold.
Yep. Yeah.
Can you talk us through the transition?
Yeah, so I think it was, Fenwick Gold was that, I guess I see it now, the golden era, was that era in which, we were creating this product and implementing it for our customers and maturing it
Yeah.
as product. And yeah, and Fenwick Apps is really the launch, internationally, sort of to take that and sort of just rebrand it, and sort of just, through research and marketing effort to say, that,
And that happened
just,
pretty recently, it is?
yeah,
Because that's how I
we
saw
pretty
your
much have
LinkedIn page.
really
Yeah.
Directions North America, which, returned from a
Right.
couple of weeks ago, that was really the launch, where we put some socials out,
Yeah.
and yeah, and sort of, sort of new coloring system, sort of dedicated, web page on our website. So that,
Yeah.
Fenny Gold was always very much tied into our consultancy and still is, very, very important to our consultancy. But we needed that, that sort of slight rebrand, slight separation to say, hey, for the international market, it's not about the consultancy. It's just about the apps, and so we're trying to, create that nice cohesion. That in Australia, we're a consultancy,
Yeah.
and our apps make our consultancy better. But for the rest of the world, we are Fenwick Apps, and that's what we're all about.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Being present in AppSource and getting some attention from all around the world, it makes us rethink how we reshape our practices, having more engaged with the marketing teams and so on, because now we're targeting a much wider audience. And now there's a lot of other things in play because now the competition is different. You're not competing with your Australian market only, which you already know people who knows people. Then even by word of mouth, you can just make a sale. But whereas right now you're competing with all these people all around the world because we'll talk about rebates in details. If you go and search for rebates in AppSource, there's like 10 of them, right? So it's quite difficult to separate yourself, and it's not only the app itself make it different, all the marketing and other elements around it also make it different. So before we dive into the AppSource and talk through your apps, we'll try. And can we talk about something else? There is a bit of a revolution happened in Business Central reporting. So Business Central reporting receives a lot of love and attention and commitment from Microsoft in the last couple of years. And with 2024 release wave 2, all of a sudden we saw this amazing Power BI reports popping up from out of nowhere. And as with any revolution has, it also had a code name. The code name was Project Yellowstone, and you guys were the leading actors of it. Can you talk us through what is Project Yellowstone and what was Fenwick's role in it?
Yeah. So when, I guess when we went to market, first apps into AppSource around sort of 2018, 2019, that was sort of when Power BI was becoming, had sort of been created and was becoming, sort of ubiquitous with reporting and Business Central. And so, similar to the origins of Fenwick Gold, we created the concept of Power BI Gold, is what we were calling it at the time, which was,
Yeah.
if we start reporting with a blank canvas, every implementation, then, there's this upfront cost just to get to get up and running. And so we wanted to be able to, like we do with our apps, start with a good base, and not have to do that custom work to create data models and build up the first reports. So we using that app culture, we created finance, sales, purchasing, manufacturing, inventory sort of suite of Power BI apps that out of the box, already had the, really rich data model to get the data out of BC, um, pre-built reports that connected to that data model so that all of our clients could be up and running quickly, and then add to that to what they needed for their own custom reporting. And so it gave us a massive head start each reporting implementation, just like our apps did for Business Central. And so putting all our apps onto AppSource, by far our most popular download, significantly. I used to run a report and I would filter out Power BI just to sort of see how the other apps were going, because the size of the pie for Power BI was so large, and so it was clearly a gap in the product of not having that out of the box reporting. And so yeah, our first directions a few years ago was entirely focused on, hey, we're back then still Fenwick Gold, no Fenwick, but hey, here's some great Power BI reports, and that was our sort of headline act, was to show our Power BI reports. And then sort of month after that, got an email from Microsoft, who were clearly started on the mission. Hey, they clearly recognise that they need to improve the reporting with Business Central, and we're sort of doing a worldwide search to find what IP was out there for reporting, and evaluated many different solutions, and settled on Fenwick's Fenwick Gold Power BI, and purchased the IP from us.
Wow.
And then a part of that deal was Project Yellowstone, which was sort of the licensing of the existing IP, and then an amount to for us to essentially subcontract to Microsoft
Mm.
to take our IP and add to it to make it a standard feature of Business Central. So things like it was only in English, it's now in 25 languages. Accessibility that
Yeah.
we didn't think too much about when we were building it
Yeah.
ourselves, but for Microsoft, a key thing. So taking all these sort of the things that would
Yeah.
take it to that next level to be an embedded true Microsoft product, we worked closely with them now for over a year to get that first wave released last year. We're about to release another massive wave that we've done all the development for, in close collaboration with Kenny from Microsoft,
Yeah.
as the program manager for the reporting. So on a scrum with Kenny twice a week, and
All
working
right.
closely with Microsoft. So I've sort of got our development team, sort of with their foot in both camps. They spend a lot of time on
Yeah.
Yellowstone developing the reports, and all our Power BI experts also work on that, as well as obviously continuing our apps and the evolution of those. So it's been, I think it was great validation for us that our apps, were good, and that's, I guess, given us that energy to do the rebrand and really double down on our global presence with, sort of that backing and validation behind us, and obviously utilizing that occurred to give us extra credibility, and use that to help with our marketing efforts, obviously. So
Yeah, such a proud moment, I would say, right? So, and
yeah,
honestly,
it was
it all sounds so fast as well. It just happened in a year, a bit more than a year, perhaps. It shows the commitment and the ambition from Microsoft, that uh, how they've committed to improve the reporting and analysis in this short time frame. Imagine they try to build all those, right? All
yeah,
those tens of reports, then it would take
yeah,
years and years.
yeah, and it
But
had taken
now,
us years, and so
yeah,
and
fair
that's
enough. And they're
yeah.
market tested too, right? So even though they have built it, they would still get to receive feedback from customers and partners, and to tailor it based on the market. But your apps, your reports were out there for years, and in that sense, it's been market tested. So it was a sure bet, and such a clever move for Microsoft, and such a great present for all the Business Central world as well, right? Because
Absolutely, yeah,
reporting, let's face it, it wasn't the most um let's say, powerful part of Business Central. But now that's only getting better each day. So you have, so granted, there's a bit of a change from your regarding accessibility and make it more Business Central standard. And the cosmetics also changed a little bit. I assume there are like
Yeah, we had,
screenshots.
that was the cool thing, working closely with the design experts at Microsoft to come up with you know good consistent design, and then make sure that everything fitted these templates, and so just
Hmm.
went through that. It was already so we were proud of it as a great product, but to just work with the experts at Microsoft, obviously elite at what they do, to then take it to that next level. Yeah, I was really proud to celebrated with the team after the release last November to sort of say, well, we took it from here and we've worked hard to get it to here, and great achievement. And
Yeah.
having been a consultant for 25 years in
Yeah.
doing it, as you said, knowing all the years of saying, excusing
Yeah.
the reports, to then be able to proudly, go into a demo and say, here's out of the
Yeah.
box reports, for everyone around the world, that's, fantastic. So.
Fantastic. And honestly, it's a bit different than Microsoft buying a vertical as well, because you use Microsoft tool, a standard tool to actually enhance. So it shows how right you guys were heavily investing in Power BI, and it's just a justification of that, Microsoft acquiring it. So yep, good on you guys. That's a incredibly proud moment, should be, I think. And let's move on to the App Source. So is it your end goal to have the most apps in App Source? Are you guys trying to become because right now you guys are on the second after an ISV from Italy, I think EOS Solutions. You guys one of the two ISVs that have more than 100 apps. Is this something you guys consider?
No, it just, as I said, it was obviously many years of
Yeah,
building. And when we decided to, sort of how we split up all this functionality, obviously it could have been, oh, well, let's create less and bigger apps, but to sort of have that sort of a la carte breakdown, sort of, created a number of apps, and then, a bit smaller. And so if you want, just that one little piece of functionality, you can get it. And
yeah,
then, we thought, well, we've got app packs, right? So we've got a foundation pack, we, which is, I guess our sort of, I think about a dozen apps that we would consider essential, and what, we've, 200 plus implementations we've done over the last 15 years.
yeah,
Every single one of those always has this foundation pack. And so, we thought, well, create small apps, but, package them in groups, was a better way of going,
yeah.
so that if someone really just
Let's
wanted that one thing, they can have it. If they wanted a pack, they could
All
have it
right.
all
Let's
sort of.
talk about the pack. So you mentioned Foundation Pack, that Fenwick Gold, that's Fenwick Gold Foundation Pack, and you can find Advanced Bank Reconciliation, Default Dimensions, Advanced Default Dimension, Advanced General Ledger, Receivables, Payables, and what else? Good Looking Documents. That's such a clever name. Sell to buy from, advanced prepayments, cloud companion for Outlook, company setup toolkit, and IT admin toolkit. So this is the foundation pack. So you have this kind of a commercial listing called foundation pack, and if someone's tries to get that, they will receive all this pack of apps. And then on top of this, there's also dependent apps, right? And also there's a foundation pack for Australia. These are more local
Yeah,
apps that is tailored
adds a
for
few
us.
local apps.
Yeah,
Yep.
like e-banking, advanced EFT, and that sort of thing. And it's not only for Australia, some of them for Australia and New Zealand. So this is the
Yes.
foundation pack in a nutshell. And then you mention what other packs there? There's like an inventory pack, I believe, right?
So we have a inventory essentials pack, which again was kind of grouped up in foundation originally, but with like, well, not everyone has implements inventory, so the foundation is very much, everyone would have it. It's very much finance and admin based, so it forms a, foundation. Then inventory essentials is kind of our core smaller apps that again, you just sort of would typically want every time and again we would implement in every implementation, and just kind of, almost our consultants have always implemented with them, and when
Yeah,
they're not there, they kind of forget what is standard and what's not. We've had a consultant left and moved to New Zealand, and sort of doing contracting over there. One
yeah,
went to Perth, and they were both, they're kind of our two best customers or partners now, because they started implementing with these new companies, then they didn't have Fenwick Gold Foundation or the apps, and they would get stuck. Where is that button? Where's that gone? And then so they're like, and so they're saying, obviously that's what we want, partners
Yeah,
around the
yeah,
world to feel. He's like, well, I need this. So that's the foundation, and the inventory essentials are those things where you can't live without. Is the idea? Many
fair
do, but
enough.
don't know that they can't. So
Brett, if I ask you to name all your apps in AppSource, can you do it?
I
The
probably,
100
pro- I probably
113 of
could.
them. Really?
Yeah, certainly.
Honestly,
I've
I'm
lived.
thinking if I have 113 kids, can I can I name their names, all of them?
Look,
I don't. I'm not even
I
sure.
certainly have
Yeah.
favourites, but
Oh yeah.
yeah, but yeah, I certainly, I guess I if you quizzed me, I probably could sit here and memorize them all. But
No.
yeah, I think as I said, there's sort of 70 main apps,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess our mission is that I'm at Directions a couple of weeks ago, and you sort of go around the room of the expo, and they go,
Mm.
well, they're focusing on say a payment app, and they've got a advanced bank rec app, and they've got a rebates app, or so people like sort of focus on one thing, and
Mm.
I guess one of our marketing selling points is to say, well, you don't need to pick that ISV and that ISV and that ISV, and then they don't talk to each other, and there's problems, and you got to deal with different companies. It's like, well, come to us, and you can kind of get almost everything.
Yeah.
And on top of that 70, there's about 30 odd what we call connectors, and so they're
Yeah.
apps that sit between each app. So you've got, a discontinued master data, and, sort of another app, and you go, well, I need to be able to discontinue within that app. Well, then there's a connector so that
Yeah.
you get both apps and then connect them together. And so it sort of creates this network where all the apps can talk to each other and don't conflict with each other. And so that's what sort of creates the over 100
Okay.
listings. Things like, an app that's worldwide, but a little piece that makes it compatible with extra Australian functionality would be that app for Australia. And so while there's over 100, there's, I guess truly more around 70 children that I have to remember.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And the goal, I understand, is being the one-stop shop for all the apps and for the requirements for the businesses. And there's, as you mentioned, so you mentioned 70 main apps, right? And it's gonna be very tricky to really name all of them. Would you prefer to highlight a couple of those? Like, for example, what was it? Multi-entity operations kind of caught my eye. It was quite
Yep.
an interesting one, having
Yeah.
multiple entities in one company. So that's kind of an interesting one. Um, the and you mentioned you have favorites. Can you name your
Yeah.
favorites, or is it? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's a really good one to pick out because that's been,
Yeah.
for us as a consultancy, been a very successful app to have. So we were, I guess, implementing for companies like property development, various things where, they would have, lots of different companies, or would have companies that say, I'm buying, this company, and company want to keep them operating in a sort of separate, what we'd say in Australia, separate ABN, separate entities as such, but they might be sharing the same inventory, or they've really got the same chart, sharing customers, sharing vendors, and rather than creating multiple companies in Business Central and having to sort of sync data or share data between, we created an app that allows many entities as you want to operate within that one company silo, and ensure that the integrity around a chart of
Yeah.
accounts, that balances per entity, but is instantly consolidated, that allows automatic, sell this product, then the purchase order happens automatically for the other entity, and all the entity loan accounts and all the accounting that has to occur, just happening more automated, so you don't have to, go to the IC outbox and send it, and go to the IC inbox and receive it and
Yeah.
process it.
Yeah.
It's just all happening automatically. So it really
Fair
takes that
enough.
standard intercompany and
Yeah.
automates it within the one environment. So that
Yeah.
certainly is been a very popular
It's
for
kind of a
us. Yeah,
responsibility centers in steroids, perhaps, right? You
yeah,
use
we
responsibility
definitely
centers in the background,
base it
and
off
also
responsibility centers.
back in the
Yes,
day. Back in the day, we used to have like data per company, right? We were able to make it yes or no,
yes,
data per
yeah,
company. So all the data in that specific table, say in this case GL accounts, to have your chart of accounts same, you could just switch off the data per company, or yeah, you make it no, and then you have it same for all of them. But now in Business Central Online World, we don't have that capability, but this kind of tackles that.
yep,
Fantastic. So, all right, let's talk about your let's talk about your app source experience a little bit, and then we'll jump into the rebates app that we were gonna focus. Um, you've been there from almost day one, so as soon as the apps was born, you were kind of there. And how is your first of all, are you transactable in AppSource? Do you use your Stripe app for being transactional?
Yeah, we do. We're in the process of, I guess, transitioning to the Microsoft billing. We're involved in sort of pilot programs with that, and so sort of
Yeah,
across that, we in the years prior had invested a lot in getting our billing app, functional and handling different scenarios. So we have the packs, for example. So it'll be the foundation
yeah,
pack or our manufacturing pack that we need the smarts to say, if you download the pack, all those
yeah,
apps come with it, but our packs are typically sort of 50% less than if you were to buy all the apps a la carte. So we kind
mhm,
of need to have all the logic built in to handle all of that. And then one of our apps is print it with Loftware Cloud, and we charge that per print. Our pay it with Stripe integration is charged. That sort of is covered off via Stripe already, so I don't have to sort of worry. So I've got to have all these sort of exceptions built in, and so we invested a lot, so we could handle all the different pricing options we were required. But one of the big benefits of moving to MS billing, be able to get in that sort of CSP side of things. That not everyone wants to put their credit card in and be
yeah,
billed that way. Partners want to sort of control that with the rest of the business central billing, and so that's a big motivator for us. Okay, certainly all the apps that are that sort of per user per month, which is how we charge for our apps, that aligns nicely with Business Central. That suits perfectly to be in CSPs. And you need a 10 Business Central licenses and 10 Fenwick App foundations, and you're done, and it's all
that's it.
consolidated into
Yeah.
one invoice. That's where we want to be. So that's the future plans for how we do our billing.
Fair play, fair play. If you categorize your apps out there, I mean, you mentioned it a little bit. Even though I want to talk about them one by one, I want to name one by one. I'm also cautious. There's like 113 of them. Plus, there's 8 Power BI report as well. So that's almost
Yeah.
120. I did a bit of a homework before this episode, and the first thing I checked was actually what is the longest podcast ever recorded, and that is. So that is 36 hours, someone from, by a single host, not a team, someone from UK. And if we talk about one of each of your app for 20 minutes, I think we have a good chance breaking it. So yeah, I'm not sure if you have the time, 36 hours, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's do you want to name a few at least so people hear? So some of the main ones, because some of the main ones you build apps for those apps as well. So let's say you have a multi-entity operations, then you also have Fenwick Gold Role Center for multi-entity operations, kind of a thing. So do you want to name at least that main apps?
Yeah, I think so there's a lot to get through, but I can sort of I
Yeah.
guess cover off in groups, right? So like a good example where we talk about our apps being an ecosystem and all connected. Our what we've now was gold role centers, now we've dropping the gold, so it's called better role centers, which is one of our foundation apps that you mentioned. Is you know we've taken the standard Microsoft role centers and made them better in our opinion, and
Okay.
um,
So
and
that's a
therefore all
renaming
the
coming,
all the
right?
apps. Sorry.
That's a renaming coming. So because it's still
Yes.
there, like
Yep.
with
Yep.
oh,
It's
okay,
coming. Yeah. Yeah.
and
So we're sort
that
of
goes
taking
for
taking the word
uh,
gold out of, so Fenwick Gold account will be Fenwick Apps
right,
account, and Fenwick Gold
okay,
Foundation will be Fenwick Apps Foundation. So that's happening. But then something like multi-entity operations, which adds role center parts, and a lot of our apps do.
yeah,
It all comes back to extending the better role centers, so that when you install all of our apps, they all appear, and you don't have to, I'm using this role center, I can't. So sort of forms the ecosystem. So yeah, that better role center is a hub for all the apps. So you'll see a lot of the apps at that app for better role centers, because it's putting elements that are needed for that app on our standard role centers, so that everything appears in one place. So um, the one that I showcased at Directions recently, it was manufacturing pack. So Fenwick, as a consultancy, one of its strengths and I guess focuses over the years is within the manufacturing industry in Australia. So food manufacturers, steel fabricators, and lots in between. But sort of certainly food manufacturing has been a big one for us, and so that being I guess a typical client base or a predominant base for us is in the manufacturing space. We've got our manufacturing pack, so I was showcasing that at Directions, and that consists of 8 apps that make the manufacturing side better, which is production scheduler and item configurator. We've got some sort of setup stuff around more
Yep.
detailed overheads to break your costing down better. Advanced standard cost. Sort of shop floor execution screen that allows the shop floor to have to execute the production, and some advanced manufacturing reporting sort of on top of that. And so and on top of that we have a graphical drag and drop scheduler. So kind of
Yeah.
having implemented so many manufacturers over the years, sort of finding all these requirements that BC didn't cover, we've sort of plugged that where we feel now as a manufacturing solution can compete with other products out there that would claim to be better or dedicated manufacturing solutions. Business
That
Central
drag and
plus our pack
yeah.
is
That drag and drop scheduler, it lives outside BC, right? It's a web-based application, but
yeah
it's still, but it talks with BC with the help of production scheduler. So there's two
yes
production scheduler. One is the drag and drop, and one is the production scheduler. So you
yeah
need the production scheduler
yeah
to make the other one work. So there's a dependency in between.
yeah
But yeah, it lives outside Business Central, right? And it's licensed kind of differently.
Yeah. So we created that originally as a separate web portal. One of our other areas was that we focus on is in the waste and recycling
Hmm.
as a vertical product called Enwas or now Tigos Suite out of Germany, and that had a sort of similar requirement of scheduling trucks for waste pickup. And so we sort of, they sort of were born at the similar time to have this framework of a web portal to then schedule. And so it suited production scheduling very well. We are looking into, there's great benefits of having it as an external portal. So we're looking at, continuing that, but also potentially
Yeah.
having sort of an embedded control add-in type scenario for it as well. And that's something we're
Hmm.
working on at the moment, which
Okay.
also has some advantage in terms of quick deployment and things like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, again, that's some people just use the production scheduler and you more text-based scheduling within BC, but those that want to graphically do it on a timeline and see and drag and drop, it works really well for them. So
Yeah,
we've got
fair
got
enough. Okay, no, good stuff, good stuff. Okay, can we just now dive into the Rebates app? That's the
Yep.
app we wanted to dive in today, and let's talk about the Rebates app. So, what is Rebates? Why we cannot do it in the standard application? Why is it difficult to do in standard application? And why do we need an app for that?
Yep. Yeah, so this is, I guess, a good sort of Fenwick gold into Fenwick's app story where, it's probably going back, almost 20 years now. Again, food manufacturer, implementing, I was involved in implementing, through the noughties,
Mhm.
in Australia, and so sort of would be the big supermarket chains, Coles, Woolworths, franchisees, Domino's, Baker's Delight, things like that, where that have the requirement to pay off invoice, essentially discounts, but rebates where, okay, you're charging that invoice goes out at $1,000, but when it comes time for them to pay, well, they're not paying $1,000, they're keeping 10%
Yeah,
and paying less. So we we had that requirement come up at several of our clients. Say, hey, we've got, we're doing it all in spreadsheets. I'm going to track it manually and it's inaccurate. And then, well, they're claiming this amount. We don't really know, are we paying the right amount? We want to sort of be in more control of this. And we want to, sort of be the one that either creates the invoice or the credit note rather than being told what we've got to reduce the amount by. And so we took essentially what the sales prices architecture was back then. So okay, well
yeah,
we can basically create the same thing here, and it's for a product or a product group and a customer group. It's either a percentage or a fixed amount, and created all the different set up to allow that to occur. And then instead of being a discount or a reduced price on the invoice, it just would accrue the amount and then have the ability to report that rebate at the end of a period and say, okay, well, we've accrued this amount. Hey, we've got the credit claim from them for X amount. And then they could reconcile and see the detail
yeah,
behind that, validate it, and not have to manually handle all that in spreadsheet. So that sort of was born out of doing that a few different ways, a few different times for a few different clients. And then when it came time saying, well, there's a product here clearly to
Yeah,
do rebates. We did that in sort of 2011, and then yeah, really every client that we have that has those situations where they're dealing with a third party where there's a rebate involved off invoice, then they use our app to make sure that they're accurately accruing for it from a financial perspective, and making sure that when it is either paid out or money coming back their way, that it's accurate and the detail is reportable, and that their margins can be reported. Because I
yeah,
sold it for 1,000, my cost of goods sold is 800, but I've given a rebate later for 20. Well, I haven't really made $200. I've made $180 on. I probably should be reporting that because that's how I'm in detail to see whether that product is truly profitable or not. So it gives much more insight for the business to make decisions around pricing
absolutely,
and that
absolutely.
sort of
And
thing.
there's a walkthrough in your YouTube channel as well. So if anyone's interested, there's a documentation, but also there's a video that walks
Yes, we
through
did
how
do a
it
video. Yep.
works.
And it's funny
And
how it's evolved
mm,
even since that video because, we had it,
yeah,
it was probably stable, hadn't been changed for 10 years. Our clients would use it a certain way. And then we
yeah,
put it on AppSource and we get downloads. It's probably our most popular download out of the US. And there'll be, like with pricing, people create these crazy scenarios or there's
yeah,
mins and
yeah,
matches and that plus that are, not as simple as it was. And so it has evolved quite a lot in the last 2 years as the worldwide demand's picked up and different requirements in different countries have come up, and we've evolved it quickly, and that's the other thing we want to be seen as a app provider is that we're quick to react. If there's demand out there to make the product better and handle a certain scenario that we're not currently handling, we want to be able to turn that around quickly, and sort of and certainly for our partners so that they can please their clients.
yeah,
And so it's been nice to see that evolve after being around for almost 20 years. It's
yeah.
probably doubled in functionality in the last 12 months just to handle more scenarios. So it's fun to
Yeah.
be doing that as well.
One thing I like about your apps on the App Source page, it's about each one of them has a link to release notes. So if anyone's interested to see the history of what has been changed or what has been fixed, they can and it's in the App Source app card as well. When you log into the app, you see there's a link that it guides you through the release wave, and then you can just see the release note, and you can see the release notes of what has been done through the history, as far as it goes to, as far as it goes to 17 or version 16, I don't know, whenever the app was born, basically. Yeah, great. So there's also a report that goes with rebates, right? So there's a rebates Business Central app, but if you look at Fenwick's Power BI apps, there's also a dedicated rebates Power BI report that I assume works well with your rebates app, and even there's a dependency, is there?
Yeah. So yeah, obviously we talked the history before about our sort of standard Power BI packs that are now,
Uh-huh.
through Project Yellowstone now in the product. Yeah, a lot of our other apps, of course, naturally require reporting, and so obviously using the framework we had with our Power BI Gold, so things like our default reporting or our
Mm.
rebates, they need, you know, they need their own reports, and so yeah, so off the app source store on Power BI, you can download rebates from there and it will connect it up to your BC and then it'll draw that data out of the rebates app. So we don't charge any extra, the license you pay in Business Central covers that you can, if you want, download the Power BI side. And so that's something
Yeah,
we want to continue to invest in with all our apps that need a reporting element. That Power BI is a good solution to do that, graphically and in more detail. And so where we used to
sure.
have sort of an RDLC embedded within
Yeah,
BC and it was a bit clunky, we can say, well, yeah, let's have some screen-based ability to report, but let's do the full shebang in Power
yeah.
BI, and so yeah,
And we
we've
are all moving
absolutely got
away
that.
from RDLC anyway, right? It's gonna
Yeah,
be
well, that's been a big
deprecated. Yeah.
big part of Yellowstone that we've also worked on is not only the Power BI side. In this release, there's a whole suite of new manufacturing reports or change manufacturing. So we've also done the development to add Excel layouts, Word
Mm,
layouts, and deprecate the RDLC. So it's been again fun to be
right.
involved in that evolution of BC reporting,
Nice.
to make not only Power BI, but you don't have to have Power BI. We're also making BC reporting within BC better as well. It's sort of Yellowstone's been covering both aspects of
Wow.
reporting.
If anyone's interested in Yellowstone in terms of the technical and or even functional stuff. There's a GitHub repository that both you and Microsoft manages. I think it's called Project Yellowstone Documentation. So there's
Yes.
quite a
Yep.
bit information. Obviously, you can go aka.ms BC reporting analysis page, and there's lots of information there. But also there's a GitHub repo as well that gives you a bit more insights if anyone's
Mhm.
interested. Um, yeah, so I think, but where is the connector for the Rebates app? Is it in the Rebates app, or I assume
Yeah. So
there are
essentially,
APIs
yeah,
export somewhere.
yeah, install the
Yeah.
Rebates app, and that exposes the APIs from a Business Central perspective. Download the
But
Power
Brett,
BI side,
there's a missed
and then
opportunity
connect.
for a new app, I think, right? If you want to be the number one ISV that has the most apps, you need to capture these opportunities. You know, if you could just easily make Rebates connector, and there you go. There's one more app,
Yeah, no,
right?
I think we can avoid that.
Yeah,
So yeah, the now
fair
that we're
enough.
even changing from gold to apps, right, we've got to go and update 100 listings. So it's
Yeah,
it's, it's
yeah,
hard
none of
work.
these a thing. Yeah. No, that's. Is there anything else you want to add in terms of? I had a question. So when you issue the credit memo, and calculate the rebate, does it take consideration into if the invoice has been paid or not, or does it like look at the pure sales invoices that's been generated? Because if there's a sales invoice generated but it hasn't been paid, and perhaps it's never going to be paid, perhaps does it still count towards the rebate?
Yeah, it does.
Mhm.
Obviously, it doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be taken up, but yeah,
Yeah,
and it's functionality we've added in the last 12 months is, we've sort of not only handled the customer side, but the vendor side, and then calculating a claim. It might be that the money goes back to the original customer. It
yeah,
might be the money goes to a third party, which then acts as a vendor because, say, in a franchisee scenario, it's sort of the franchisee pays X amount, and the head office company, like a Domino's, for example, pays, gets some money back. And so we've got to raise either a sales credit or a purchase invoice,
yeah,
and vice versa,
yeah.
depending on if
Okay.
it's a vendor claim. And essentially, yeah, it's a calculation to look through a period of time. So end of month, I need to do a claim. So you're setting your range for that period, and it then will calculate and create the document for you with the detail and obviously we've got the data behind and the reporting. So I go,
Sure.
they're claiming it. Well, we've got to give a credit for 1,000. What's that made up of? And then typically it's like, well, we've got a payment from them that's $1,000 less. I can
Yeah,
post this credit, apply it all together, nets to zero, happy days. But obviously, it doesn't always net to
nice.
zero, and
Yeah.
then let the accountants worry about that. Yeah,
Yeah, fair enough. It's definitely something you need an app for that. It's yeah, by standard, it's very difficult to keep track of it, and there's no setup for it anyways, right? So it's definitely you need a third-party solution, and plug and play an app. It's no brainer, and that's why it's a quite a popular area to cover by the ISVs. There's, as I said, there's almost 10 rebates app. So your app actually covers vendor rebates and sales rebate, or just the sales rebates,
yeah,
both
no,
of them.
both. Yep, yep,
But
yep.
fantastic. So you mentioned 100 apps and not easy to maintain all of them. So I'll ask a bit more technical question, but you don't really have to dive in. You can just pause if you have no information. So how do you manage all this in terms of your DevOps and your CI/CD operations? Well, what are the tools in place that you guys use?
Yeah, so we do. Yeah, we use DevOps, and yeah, have obviously a rigorous process there around managing our backlog and going through the pull request process and internal
Yeah,
review and pretty it's a bit over my head, the whole pipeline side of things, but some pretty
yeah.
intense
Do you still write
pipelines that
code, Brett?
automate a lot of testing and
Yeah,
and validation, and building of the apps, and
yeah.
then obviously as it goes through to AppSource, there's that extra level of validation. So, and then test suites built in so that the pipelines run the test suites as it's building the app and all. So we're certainly I guess going through, while we had that era of sort of 5 years of taking our IP out of the base and converting it to apps and getting it in there and live, I sort of see a new, the Fenwick Apps era now is, taking all that product, making it better. And a big part of that is the quality of it, more test suites, more automation to make sure that, now we've got people around the world using it. Can't just sort of chuck it on AppSource and hope for the best. And then next morning you got emails that you've broken, people's
Yeah,
systems. So we're really improving our quality continuously to make sure that it goes through the rigors before it's released. And then our documentation so that people can support, and look up. So that's sort of the next, that sort of quality wave of better documentation, better testing automation to make sure that when we are doing updates, that we're not breaking anything, and people are
Fair
aware
enough.
of it.
Yeah. Sorry, I jumped in there to try to ask. Do you still write code?
No, no, I
Not anymore.
Yeah, so I was a developer. Seaside forever is my mantra.
Okay.
So I did a lot of Cal development over the years, and I wrote originally a lot of the code for Fenwick Gold.
Oh,
And as I
nice.
said, back then it was our consultants and me managing to just get their time when I could to develop it all out, which happened over many years. And then when sort of Business Central came along, and some of my role sort of changed into being COO and product manager, I'm like, um, won't get on the tools too much. I actually never. Well, I think VS Code automatically installs on my laptop, but I've never opened it. But I'm in DevOps every day, reviewing the code, signing off
Okay.
PRs, and so I still help all the developers with code design and architecture and reviewing the code. But I might write a bit of pseudocode to help them along. But
Right. No,
yeah,
fair
not
enough. I mean,
not writing it, not writing it anymore. So
yeah,
sort of
one less hat. One less hat.
one less hat. Yeah.
Uh, in terms of the extensibility of your app, so I tried to find some technical documentation about your apps, and there's a portal that obviously I don't have access. Perhaps it's in there in terms of knowledge base, but I couldn't find much of a technical documentation in terms of where is your events are being raised and what are the purposes of that. So there's always that extra 1%, 2%,
Yeah.
say that either the customer, if they're in-house, or the partner that tries to change the business behavior. What do you guys do to help them to cover that 1%?
Yeah, and I think that's, the sort of talk about the new Fenwick Apps era about quality, and
Mm.
that's a big part of it. So since, when they were mainly being implemented by us, we need something, we put something in. And so we've sort of been quite reactive to things like events. If someone's implementing our app and we need an event, we sort of add it in, and, so the documentation always lags a little bit behind that. So
Yeah.
that's certainly that documentation that we need to double down is, of where our events are. And, and as I said, we're very provide good customer service. So if you need something and you've got our app and you need to extend it, you know, we'll get that event in really quickly. So we want to, we'll turn that around, within 24 hours so that, people can extend our app. And it's just getting that documented. Product like SMS Integrator, we get, a lot of inquiries about, and really that app is out of the box is a framework. Like, it works well with our alerts app to automate
Mm.
sending out SMSs based on certain database events. But if someone's got a bespoke scenario that they want to send an SMS out in a certain process that they have, a little bit of code may need to be written. And we're actually going through the cycle of publishing that at the moment to give a online development guide if you want to extend our SMS Integrator app to send an SMS in any of your scenarios. These are the functions and ways, and here's some example code on how to do it. And so that, that's, I guess, the next wave of work we want to do to make our apps more friendly to developers, is to provide them with as much information we can so that they can make, do what they want, just like they can with BT. So.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, great. Is there anything else you want to add in terms of, for example, rebates, or do you have any further comments, or
No, I think
anything regarding technical as well? Yeah.
No, I think we've covered it off. As I
Yeah.
said, we
Yeah.
probably name dropped maybe half the apps. We might have to do another podcast to focus on a few more. But obviously, people can go and check out our
Yeah.
website. Going through a good evolution this year to really improve that solutions page and get more detail and documentation, and and push them more. And so we're excited. I think it's great what you're doing with this podcast.
Oh, thank you.
I think as you said, the app world out there is vast, and so it's nice to sort of have this to sort of help curate what's out there, and let people know about it, because sort of that's what customers want, right? They don't want you
Yeah.
going off and
Honestly, you
building.
guys.
I could build that
Yeah.
myself is kind of
Yeah.
where I was probably 20 years ago, but things have changed, and if there's this,
Yeah.
an app out there, it's like, why reinvent the wheel? We've got a really good relationship with Tasklet Factory with their mobile WMS, because we've
Hmm.
been implementing that for 10 years, and it's like, well, we don't need to build our own warehouse, mobile warehouse solution. There's a great one out there, and we've partnered closely with them. So we love other ISVs that have already got it covered. We'll partner closely with them, and all our apps, sort of built around that, or it's built, it complements it well because we always implement that as well. And so, I love sort of promoting the app world and good apps that are out there and work well together because, it makes, I want partners to, you know, make Business Central even better. And that's what apps do.
100%.
That's what
Yeah,
apps do. So yeah.
100%. Even if that app is from Australia, would you still do the same? Do you have the same mentality, even though you are local competitors?
That's a that's a good question. It's yeah, it's no a small market in Australia and partners know each other, and I think there is trepidation around and I guess that's the a point of conflict, which why Fenwick Apps as a brand and that international part of our messaging is, well, we're not here to do consultancy and step on anyone's toes in that world. We're here to support you for apps, and so we want to sort of draw that line. That's a lot harder in Australia, right? Because
Yeah.
we are competing as partners and trying to get that that consulting client. So yeah, we do have local partners in Australia that, as I said, that it might be
I
because
mean,
someone left our company and went and know about it, but and maybe there's some we won't get as many in Australia as we will
fair
elsewhere
enough.
because of that conflict, and that's okay. But we certainly make them available in Australia because we want to help as I said, make the product better here
Sure.
as much as
Brad,
here as anywhere.
if you call Australia a small market, what should I do here in New Zealand?
Well, smaller
Small.
than others, but it's still a big market for sure. So yes.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, you touched quite a good point in terms of the collaboration as well. You already mentioned a few ISVs, and I'm 100% on board with that idea. I totally agree. And even on the local landscape, I still think it's best we go for the app that is proven rather than building that. Obviously, there are some areas that we need to be careful in terms of the customer engagement, let's say, because we want to keep our customers, right?
Yes.
But eventually, if there's an app that you guys have the expertise that we don't, then it's no brainer that plug and play that, and that will free up a lot of consultancy hours for us to add value in another area that we are actually the expert of. So I'm 100% agree with that idea. So in terms of future, so you gave us a lot of sneak peek. The name change in terms of the gold as well, that's already done, but the branding is going on. Like you said, better looking apps or better apps, something like that. Now there's also name change, right? So what else? What's happening at Fenwick? It sounds like a lot happening right now.
Yeah, and yeah, I think that's why that sort of it was hard work to take all that embedded code and
Sure.
transform it and make apps. So could was getting quite laborious as the 70th app was coming out and
Yeah.
going. And so now, yeah, sort of, I guess, a more of an exciting area where we get to invent and improve and come up with new ideas. And so, with, AI becoming, already such a popular thing, with what can we do with AI that's practical and useful to make our apps better? And so we've got a research project happening at the moment with, to sort of pioneer that in one of our apps. So, well, yeah, there's this problem we keep getting asked and we can't solve that in our heads with how we would code that because it's such a
Yeah.
complex fuzzy requirement. And we're like, well, yeah, this is where AI could fit. So it's sort of rather
Yeah.
than, I guess, using AI as a marketing tool to say we've got AI and just chucking a Copilot prompt into one of our apps, we want to, really research it and make sure that, hey, there's actually a problem here that AI can solve, and AI
Yeah.
is the best solution for it. And so we're going down that path. So that's exciting to, be using Copilot and you can see what Microsoft's doing as standard within the product, and we want to make sure we don't, just ignore that. We want to embrace it as well and make sure that if it makes our apps better, well, why wouldn't we do it? So that's happening. The other area we've been working closely as part of Yellowstone and the Power BI work is the sustainability side of things. So that is a big change for Business Central to have that functionality, and I think
Yeah.
it's a good and good thing to have in the product. So we've been working on which is about to be released, all the Power BI reports that work with sustainability. There's obviously new laws coming into Australia around sustainability, so we want to be seen as experts in that area, having built up all the reports for it already, and so sort of doubling down on that world as well around sustainability and what's happening in the world around that. We think is obviously an important thing that we want to be behind. So, doing some more work in that area as Fenwick and as Fenwick Apps is certainly something that we're focused on as well.
So
So
Project Yellowstone, it's not done and dusted. It's a continuous project, is it? You just keep collaborating with Microsoft to
Um,
release and work on
yeah,
new
there
reports
will
and
be
everything?
I guess an end date, when we call it done. But we've sort of got sort of roadmap that we work closely with Microsoft on to and so it'll sort of certainly continue through this year into this wave and into the next to continue to bring more reporting and like with any reporting, it's never finished, and then I'm
Yeah.
sure it'll just continue to involve like the rest of BC. But I'd say, the project, it will, like all projects, close at some point,
Okay.
but we're
Yeah.
not done yet.
Fair enough. Okay. Wow, that was great. And wow, it's already 1 hour. I tried my best to keep it shorter, but there is a lot to talk about. And when you mentioned that we might need another episode, I would say you guys need your own podcast. Uh,
I'll talk to the marketing team about that. Yeah.
yeah, they'll probably say yes. And in terms of the closing notes, well, what is your message to community or Microsoft? And what would be your advice, or where should we invest as well? I mean, you guys, you guys tell us, where should we invest? Is it what's next?
Well, certainly, yeah. I assume anyone listening to this, whether they're already
Uh,
BC evangelists or not, obviously being, my working life has been with, Navision and now Business Central. And so, I'm passionate about the product and I think it's, in a better place than it's ever been. It was great to see in North America, the 45,000, Business Central sites come up on the screen and seeing, and I'm obviously getting closer hand insight into the investment Microsoft are continuing to make in the product. So I think, embracing Business Central, embracing the app ecosystem that makes it even better. It's my passion and it's great to, hopefully you get lots of listeners on this podcast that, are as passionate as I am to continue, making Business Central great.
Fantastic. What a great message. And it's all about ecosystem, right? And personally, I would only say thank you and the Fenwick to make our reporting better. And thanks, Microsoft, for its ambition and commitment towards the product and making such a huge change in such a short time by acquiring the Power BI reports and for the project Yellowstone. And that was a packed episode, Brett. Thank you so much for your time. I
Yeah,
really appreciate it. Thank you for your support and being here.
no worries.
And hopefully in the future, we'll be able to talk more about your apps.
That'd be
And
great.
I'm sure you're not going to run out of any content because there's just so many of them.
Yep.
All
And you
right.
need another episode filled, you know where I am.
Yeah,
So.
I do. Yeah, just across the ditch.
Just across the ditch. Yep.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. And thanks everyone
Thanks for
for
that.
listening. And hopefully it gives you a better idea of what is Project Yellowstone is. It give you a better idea of Fenwick apps and what are some details about the Rebates app as well. And thanks everyone for tuning in and talk to you soon. Bye.
See you.
See